All right. Corley Moore here with Firehouse Vigilance, going live with the weekly scrap, ready to talk about getting aggressive at getting better. I actually just did this entire spiel live on the completely wrong Facebook page. It was actually on the official page of the fire department where I work. And so that was a little bit of a mistake. So I'm going to do it again, going live here right now. So, get aggressive at getting better. 3 concepts for improving yourself, making yourself the best version of who you can be. As I go along here, whether you're watching this live, whether you catch the video, please let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to find out. First thing we're going to talk about, first concept about getting aggressive at getting better. The first concept I want to touch on for being the best version of yourself is comparisons. Who do you compare yourself to? There's 2 traps that people fall into when it comes to comparisons. And the first one is comparing themselves to someone who is in a better place in life, more successful by whatever metric you want to use to measure, someone who's farther along in their walk. And that's the first person people like to compare themselves to. And the thing about that makes it a trap is you look at where they're at, you look at how far they've gone, you look at them and you say, man, I can never be that person. I'll never be as gifted, as talented, as beautiful, as insert whatever quality you are measuring. And when you compare yourself to another person that is, as you perceive, doing better than you, then you're giving yourself an excuse not to try. And that's the first trap. And then the second trap, and probably the one that most people do more often, is they compare themselves to someone that they see as below them. And they say, well, hey, at least I'm not that guy. At least I'm not that girl. And again, give themselves an excuse to not try, to not go after what they want. And so those are the 2 traps that people do when they're using comparisons, is they pick someone that's better off than them or someone that's less fortunate. And depending on the metric you're using when I say better off and less fortunate. But the only person you should ever compare yourself to is the person that you were yesterday. This is a huge concept if you can wrap your mind around it and apply it every day. Again, it's one of those things that's very simple but not that easy to do. But all you need to do is compare yourself to the person that you were yesterday and try to be better than that person. So that's number 1 thing is comparisons. Never compare yourself to someone else. Only compare yourself to yourself. And then try to make it better tomorrow, the day after that, the day after that. So that is concept number 1 for getting aggressive at getting better, improving yourself, is comparisons, and know who to compare yourself to. Number two concept, I get in a lot of arguments about this one. I say arguments. I get in a lot of heated debate sometimes about concept number 2, get aggressive at getting better. And concept number 2 is get a book. I don't care what you are trying to learn or get better at. There is a book that exists for you to read and get better at this. Someone else has already written, someone else has already gone through the trouble to figure out the best way to do it, and they've written down how to do that, and you can learn from them. And the number 1 thing I always hear when I talk about reading and getting a book is, so almost always, they'll say, I'm not a reader. I'm not a reader. And I get that. I'm not saying that reading for everybody is the most exciting thing. I personally am a nerd when it comes to books. I love books. I can give me a book and a chair and I can sit there for hours. I order highlighters from Amazon in bulk, and then I spend the rest of the time let me see if I can show you, just highlighting and trying to learn as much as I can from books, and then I go back and read my highlights and I type them up. So, but I don't expect everybody to be like that, and I don't say that reading is the most exciting thing. But when people say I am not a reader, I just don't enjoy books, that's the equivalent to me of someone coming up and saying, well, I'm just not a worker outer. I don't like going to the gym. And because they're basically, no one walks into the gym on day 1 and gets on the treadmill, cranks it up to 15 and runs for 20 miles. No one walks into the gym on day 1, sits down on the bench press and throws up 350 pounds. If you've never been in the gym before and you go in there, you're going to have to start with the bar, maybe with a couple 10-pound weights on that bar. And that's where you're going to start. And if you stay consistent And if you have a goal in mind that you want to reach and you stay consistent, you go in there, the next time you go in there, you'll add a couple more weights onto that bar, and then a month down the road, 2 months down the road, and eventually, if 350 pounds is your goal someday, if you stay consistent, you will hit it. But you're not just going to walk into the gym and throw up 350 pounds. So when people say I'm not a reader, it's basically the equivalent. If you haven't been a person that reads books, it's basically the equivalent of saying I'm not a reader is equivalent to saying I want to walk into the gym and throw up 350 pounds. No, you start with one book, and maybe when you first start reading, it takes you forever to get through that book. You have to reread paragraphs at a time to figure out what's going on there. But if you stick to it, if you stay consistent, then you will become better, and you'll be polishing through books and learning so much so fast. So that's the second concept for getting aggressive at getting better, is that there's every topic out there. I'm not talking just fire service. From in the fire service, there's a metric butt ton of great books that are written. But outside of that, there's on leadership, relationships, parenting, you name it. There are books out there that will improve you as a person, and all you have to do is stay consistent at it. And the final concept of getting aggressive at getting better, 3 concepts for improving yourself. Final concept is goals. I cannot say how important goals are for improving yourself. Not having goals is the equivalent of jumping in the car to go on vacation and just randomly turning at different intersections until you get somewhere. And if that's your goal, you can't be surprised where you end up. And the same applies for getting better, is you have to have goals. You need measurable benchmarks to chase down and understand. This was really driven home to me recently. I had a chief who had me write down goals 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. And just recently, in my file, I found that handwritten note of goals that he made me write down. And it wasn't on purpose. I mean, it wasn't even on purpose that I found it 5 years later, but there were 5-year goals on that piece of paper. And it wasn't like I went and hung that goal up in my locker or on my mirror or anything like that. I simply wrote them 5 years ago and then forgot about them, as far as besides writing them. And to read through them and see how many of them had come to fruition, it literally blew my mind that just writing them down had that much of an impact on the choices I made and where I'm at now. And so goals are super important. You have to make them measurable, and you have to make them, you have to make yourself accountable. Not just to the goal being written down, but to other people. Go and tell them your goals. Tell your mentor, tell your crew, your captain, your chief, and say, these are the goals I'm setting for myself. I want to be accountable to them. Write down short-term goals, write down long-term goals, and write down in between things you can get. Make sure your goals are not just out there in the nether. Don't just say, I want to be in better shape, or I want to eat better. Those are goals that are setting you up for easy. Those are excuse goals, like, well, I'm better, No, make them measurable. 6 months from now, I want to look back and say, I've been in the gym 3 times a week for the last 6 months. That's a measurable goal. That's something you can hold yourself accountable to. It can be embarrassing. Don't get me wrong. If you're out of shape and you tell people, I'm going to try and lose 50 pounds, it can be embarrassing to go and say that to someone, but it's making yourself accountable. You can be a cut up at the station, one of the biggest clowns and jokesters, and you can go to your captain and say, man, I want to take the lieutenant's test. And, you may feel like they're going to laugh at you and stuff, but honestly, they'll be supportive and if they're a decent person. But it may be embarrassing. You just overcome that and make yourself accountable. So write those goals down. Write yourself down some 6-month goals, 1-year goals, 5-year goals. And I promise you this, if you take the time to write them down, when you go back at the end of the time frame and you look at them, you will be blown away by the progress you made on those goals. It is amazing what taking the time to write down your goals does. So that's it. Getting aggressive at getting better. 3 concepts for improving yourself. So Know who you're comparing yourself to. Never compare yourself to other people. Only compare yourself to the person you were yesterday, and make sure the person you are tomorrow is better than the person you are today. Get a book. Don't say, I am not a reader. Get in the gym for your brain, man. Get a book. I don't care if it takes you 2 years to read your first book. If you stick to it consistently, you will be polishing off books. It's amazing how much you will learn. And finally, goals. Write down your goals. Short-term, mid-term, long-term. Write down goals for your relationships. Write down goals for your family, husband, wife, fire service, career. Write them down and be blown away 5 years from now when you see how much that progress is. So that's the weekly scrap for the week. Appreciate you guys being here. If you would take time to make a comment or ask questions for a weekly scrap next week, any topics you want discussed, you want me to research, look into, let me know. We had the Pride and Grind last Saturday. It was an awesome event here in Moore, Oklahoma. We had Chief Walker from Oklahoma City, Chief Brush from Midwest City, and Chief Scott Thompson from down at the Colony in Texas. And they came and spent a day sharing their knowledge and their wealth of information on fireground culture and leadership and building a functional fire company and the modern issues facing the fire service of today, millennials, cancer, PTSD. It was all covered. It was beautiful. Great crowd, great turnout. And next year I hope to be even better and bringing some hands-on training. Last thing I want to touch on before I let you go, the Vigilant, Firehouse Vigilance, the Vigilant Creed. My goal when we started was to be in 50 states with a firefighter who has signed the creed in 50 states. We hit states 34 and 35 this week in Iowa and Idaho, the two of the I's. And so anyway, two of the 35 now, so we're only 15 states to go. If you want to see if your state has joined, go to firehousevigilance.com/vigilant, and you can see the map there. The red ones have all joined, and again, we're getting close, 50, and it's exciting to get this close, and then we need a new goal, of course. But to join, you simply print off the creed, read it. If you agree with it, you sign it, take a picture of yourself holding it, send the picture in, and boom, you go on the Vigilant wall. That's all there is to it. Of course, obviously, you need to stay accountable to that Vigilant creed, that excellence, that bar of excellence. And so, and if you want, these great little tags, I don't know if you can see it on the camera there, boom. We do this for others. It's all right there on the back. The Vigilant Creed in a nutshell. And that's just an accountability tag. You can get them on the website. Sometimes I don't want to go to the gym and I'm like, oh yeah, I signed the creed. I need to go to the gym. So, that being said, guys, thanks for spending your time here on the Weekly Scrap. I hope you enjoyed. Leave comments, questions. Love to answer them. I hope the tone stays silent unless it's burning, and stay safe out there. Thanks.